Okay, can you hear me? Rather, can you hear me and is it clear? Because there's a difference. Hi friends, how you doing? How are your lovely selves today? Awesome sauce. Yeah, I don't quite know about the text up there, but it's in process. We're working on it. So yeah, uh, let's see if I can bring this closer a little bit. Ow. Okay. There we go. Alright. Gotcha. I gotcha. Oh, yes. The TARDIS has returned to the shirt. Okay, yeah, this is just gonna bug me. Okay, one sec. Yeah. There we go. Oh, yeah. This is what I was talking about with the headband last time. It's just like little ring sort of things, and it's like a stretchy, well, vaguely stretchy jelly situation with a elastic on the back. Where is it? There it is. Yeah. I mean, on a plus, you know, it it's just funny because the get down to business hair for this implies something completely different than if it was this, which I find hilarious. But yeah, oh, in case it is of interest, um, like, and when I upload these to the YouTubes, I'll have a link in the I'll have a link in the description for it. But I'm gonna put a link to the shop in the Discord, right? But I was on Etsy a while back looking at books for a thing that'll be on the YouTubes in at some point, whenever they actually all get here, because there's one that's just kind of not been shipped yet, and it's been a couple weeks, so I don't know. But probably Bookmarks. So we've got which one's this? We've got Ace, and it's purple on the back, and we've got non-binary, and it's yellow on the back, and we've got the full like inclusive rainbow, and it's pink on the back, and we've got Pan, and it's kind of a bluish turquoise on the back. It's just like And I didn't even realize this until last night when I was looking at them, but not only is it like inclusive flag books and stuff, but like look at that. They each have their own plant friend. And they're recognizable species. It's so awesome. Look at that. I mean, seriously, like the aesthetics are on point, and I was really impressed because I've seen Ace a number of places, but they have an Arrow one too, and you don't usually see Arrow, which I'm glad that for folks who that applies to, they have that option. So yeah. So for today, we're going with the Ace and Monstera friend. So yeah, fun times. All right. So yes, indeed, plant friends, plant friends for the win. Uh, yeah, yeah. It's weird. Like people seem to think that Ace and Arrow are the same thing, or anyone whose one is also the other, or if you're Arrow, then you're obviously Ace, which just that's just not how that works. No, but for some people it is. So like, eh. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. Ah, which admittedly, I would like to see. Because from I haven't started reading Ace yet, um, but the topic came up in a recorded live stream that I was watching a couple days ago, and a bunch of folks had read it because it it was chosen as a community book for something. I don't know. I don't remember what the context was, but apparently it's like got the informative, potentially hard hitting something something. I don't. Meh. We'll see how it goes on that one. But if it's as informative and whatnot as I'm thinking it is on that one, I'd like to see something like that for Arrow too. Just because, like, it's so underrepresented. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally, totally get that. It's like, I get the ace bit, cause, huh, but, like, I can understand the arrow side, but it's not my personal experience, so I'd like to have, like, the extended knowledge something something. Brain's blanking right now. 1 second. I would like to hear more about it. I'll say that. That's the least convoluted method that I can figure for. Method? Least convoluted way to phrase it. Oh, yeah, there we go. Anyway. Exactly. 1 sec. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna try and not have the computer move, but yeah, it's a process. Alright. Thought I was gonna burp and then you want to do it with the mic right there. Apparently not. So there is that. Okay. So any questions, comments, whatever before we dive into part 2 or not? Yeah, that one yeah. That one I know at least one of the library apps has, so I don't think I have it reserved yet, but it's on the list of things to read. So yeah. Definitely. Alright. Have at it. What's the general botany question? One's like if I was sitting cross-legged, right, and my knee decided to just go nuts, fine, fair enough. But like, it's literally stretched out at full capacity, and it's just nope. Why? Why are you like this, knee? Why? So now I have to knead the back of my knee like a cat. On a plus it helps, so, you know, there's that. Alright. Okay, one. Hmm. I'm just gonna not have an outline on that one. There we go. It's a little bit more legible. Okay. General botany question. Whoa, hey now. There we go. Okay. Once a plant's been distilled down, say vodka or vitamin extract, has the body still know it came from an allergen and I should go nuts. Berry. Huh. Okay. Alright. I don't know if this is exactly the reasoning on that one, admittedly, because, well, it is of interest. Distillation is not my area of expertise. However, the podcast episode that I filmed on Wednesday, and is gonna be going up in the next couple of days sometime. Tomorrow maybe. We kind of touched on that a little bit, sort of, in a roundabout kind of way. Insofar as part of insofar as part of the production process is to add botanical elements to whatever the base is, and the distillation process brings out the essential oils in the plants. It brings out the condensed, the distilled oils. So if, because all of, as far as I know, because I still have reactions to stuff that I haven't quite identified yet. So as far as I'm aware, all of my food sensitivities are tied to the proteins. And as far as I know, those don't survive the distillation process. It's filtered out and stuff. So I might be able to drink something like whiskey or something, especially if it's multiple filtered and whatnot. But there's a reason that I made a point to get the gluten-free vodka. Because there's a lot that's like, if it's grain alcohol, then it's made with wheat generally. Sometimes rice, but mostly wheat because it's cheaper, or barley. But both of those have the gluten. As far as I know, it wouldn't affect me. But if the oils are the thing that's activating whatever is happening, that's probably still active in the alcohol itself. The oil tends to be mostly concentrated in the rind for citrus. But if there's the oils and the juice and stuff kind of combined, then you have that to deal with too. And especially if it's orange, that's a really strong oil. I don't know how it's impacting you guys, but I know admittedly, admittedly, I only know this because, I don't know, a while back, I was looking up fancy rats because they're cool, and, like, care instructions and stuff. So, apparently, female rats can eat oranges, but male rats can't. Or they can, but they can't have the rind because the orange oil is toxic to them. Something about kidneys, I think. So it's a kidney issue in male rats, whatever that means for the grand scheme of things in humans. And it's an acid thing, and it's various other situations. So that's all I got though. What's got orange in it though? Right, right. It's like evolution. Why? I have questions. Uh, like, I can understand in certain situations having an allergic reaction to something being minorly beneficial if it's like something in the environment is toxic and your bodily response is to forcibly eject it. But if it's like, nah, I've already eaten it and it's fine for everybody else, but it's trying to kill me now, that's fun. Like, how? How and why? Ah, yeah. So, there's that. Ugh. Also, today's stream brought to you by green tea. Yeah, that is a good question. I will say, uh, we eat a lot of broccoli and stuff, so it's not so much of an issue for my mom. But if Brassicaceae plants are an issue, because I know there's a lot of people who have an allergic reaction to Solanaceae and Brassicaceae, so the nightshades and the broccoli adjacent sort of plants. Um, it would be a problem, but I know that she can't have vitamin C anything, like vitamin C tablets or whatever, because regardless of what the source is, it has the same effect. And most of the time, it's citrus. I know In Mom's case, it's like a reflex situation, but yeah. Yeah. Just, it's one of those that if it's still in your diet and there's still issues floating around, you might want to remove it for a bit and see what happens. Just like if you have, I mean, really, I should probably avoid corn just as a thing. Because if you have a gluten sensitivity, then you might have a corn sensitivity because wheat gluten and corn gluten behave the same way, even though they're completely different. They're still technically both grasses and stuff, but they behave very similarly and connect to the same receptors. Uh, nightshades are a thing. So if you have a reaction to tomatoes that's not based on the acid, then you might have a reaction to the potatoes too, and that sort of thing. And if you have a the brassicaceae, solanaceae, and what's the third one? Just gluten. There we go. Those three seem to be the biggest common vegetation allergen sets, which is fun because they're in literally everything. Yeah. So just be aware that that's a thing that exists. It's annoying to be sure, but it's a thing. So it's what it is. Alright. So yeah. Indeed, indeed. Alright. Like, alright, I'm just gonna say, right? I don't know if it says more about how my head was at Owl. Can you not? Really? I don't know how, like, if it says more about how my head was after trying to read this thing, or what, but there's part of me that's just really impressed that, each of the sections is, like, themed, and all the essays tie together so nicely and stuff, but because, crafting actual stories in here. Right, right. So rude. Such a rude book. Honestly. Ugh. Yeah, yeah. Seriously. Hazel's Christmas party Like, oh man. Ah. Alright. So. Yeah, but I don't want to break the spine. Quit flopping around. Alright. Like, when you end up talking to the book to be like, nah, behave. I mean, that's normal, so, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about, but, you know. Alright, so, part 2. There we go. Well, I mean, right. One of was it this chapter? This part? Or was it the last part? It was last part, okay. I reread the 5th essay in part 1 this morning, so it's like, wait, which section was that? But, like, I mean, if life, or if language is splitting up things into animate and inanimate is just things that people have made, but it's made from something that comes from nature. Is it animate or is it inanimate? That's the question. Yeah. Exactly. So, right. So, part 2, it's like, exactly. Like, indeed. They, oh, mhm. Now that, yeah, okay. That's a question. Stories are alive. Books are made from paper that's made from trees, generally, that were alive, that have a life force, so therefore, but is the story only alive because it's been spoken into being? Oh. Because stories have histories and lineage and carry the knowledge and experience of the people who tell them. Yeah, exactly. It seriously. Seriously. Like, as much as I can look at something like this and read it and digest it and process it through what I know of culture and uh, ecology and the diversity of societal structures and everything else. Even if someone is very well versed in the traditions of a community, if you're not from that community, there's still bits that you miss. And that's like not going into the things that aren't shareable outside of that community, just the things that could be shared to someone outside. Yeah. The stories are only allowed when spoken in the being, audiobooks not allowed in text. I mean, it in a lot of the traditions that I'm aware of, especially if the culture has an oral tradition, which is most from what I'm again aware. Knowledge is passed on through oral tradition, through storytelling, through dance, a lot of times. And it depends on the culture that you're talking about. But if you're speaking the stories into being, if you're breathing life into what it is that is being shared, then you're. This depends on where the stories are coming from as to like how that particular culture is approaching it. But a lot of times I've heard you're speaking it into being, and that adds to the story's lineage that stretches back for as long as those words have been spoken. So it has the history of the people because the story has been shared, especially if it's in the original language, for an extended period of time. It's like in the Mediterranean, olive oil has been used as a sacred anointing oil for millennia. So when it's used for something now, that's one of the reasons that olive oil is so prevalent in so many things, especially if it's like a spiritual practice situation, because in the culture that mostly uses it, it has that lineage. Yeah. Our assistant recommended a book on Pacific Islander wayfaring for. Okay, cool. Yeah. You could probably still read it. It just wouldn't count for being written by an Asian author. But if it's like the Asian character thing. However, yeah. But no, that's cool. Pacific Islander wayfaring is a fascinating topic in and of itself. Um, Especially like a lot of the original navigators were women, and that's where there was an article that I read that I can't remember the exact points on, but from what I remember saying, that's kind of where they got the general gist of Moana, I think, as like her as an individual character. But yeah, or at least parts of her as an individual character. Yeah, fun times. Oh yeah. So, uh, right. Yeah. Okay. Ooh, nice. Nice. Yeah. Grace O'Malley is a whole thing right there. Fascinating character. Alright, so for the book, for planting sweetgrass, it was like setting up everything. For tending sweetgrass, it's things have been set up and coming to fruition, and the growing process and development of things and stuff and things. And then next week we're gonna do picking sweetgrass. So we'll see how that one goes. But right in the midst of it, we've got tending sweetgrass. So for the narrative, we've got Professor Kimmer, who is an ecologist and a scientist. They're not mutually exclusive, but extra layers. uh, a professor, a mom, and an indigenous woman who's trying to reclaim her heritage. So, is that? Wait. Was that in? The linguistics part was in Aster's, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. One sec. uh. Yeah, it's interesting, right? There's. Yeah, okay. One sec. There's a running theme for most of part 2 that seems to be that she's going through events and wants change because it's progression, but also doesn't want change because there's the scary unknown, and yeah, that's a big one. And with the pond, it's interesting because it goes from being like a failure because the kids wanted a pond to swim in, and not being able to have that because the algae keeps growing back, transforms into taking care of the tiny ecosystem that lives in there. And it's an interesting progression of I wouldn't say a character arc, but yeah. Are you a botanics student? I was. I am. I graduated a while back though, so yeah. One of those. One of the folks that was studying ethnobotany. So the convergence of plants and the people that work with them. Also, hi. How are you doing? We are currently going through chapter, part. Yeah. There's no chapters really. Yeah, it really is interesting. Very much. We're currently going through Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Like, I don't, honestly, I always have a hard time with their last name just because speech impediments and things, you know. Oh, nice! That's awesome. Plant drawings are super fun. Yeah. Very cool. Alright. Ah, yeah. So what thing can you say about plants? Basically, yeah. Alright. Ah. Okay. If I nod now, is it gonna move the thing? Okay, there we go. There we go. Because apparently, when sitting on a potentially movable surface, nodding in any capacity is not the best of options because, you know, it moves everything. Yeah. Feel free to share the plant fabulousness. There's an art channel, and I don't remember if there's a plant specific channel or not, but there's an art channel in there. So feel free to pop whatever you would like to share in there, and we'll be sure to check it out after stream. So yeah. Nice. That is cool. Very cool indeed. Yeah, scientific, especially if it's fictional plants, to like it can be kind of tricky to get it like to be like the scientific taxonomy, but it's really cool when that works. Look forward to seeing something if you want to pop it in there. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Alright. I totally forgot that I actually have notes for most of this. Wow. I'm just really on top of stuff today. Alright, one sec. I mean, I know it's mostly quotes and stuff, but part one ended up being 9 pages in a Google Doc. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. Alright. Right. So, part two is tending sweetgrass. So, we've got where the essays. Maple Sugar Moon, Witch Hazel, The Mother's Work, The Constellation of Water Lilies, and Allegiance to Gratitude. So, yeah, and going back to the titles after reading them makes a lot of sense. I see how they're titled like that. That works. All right. So, for the maple, right? We've got. Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about this. But in order for plants to kind of sense when there's enough light, when it's time to bloom stuff, the buds. What was it? What was it? Quote, there are photosensors by the hundreds in every single bud, packed with light-absorbing pigments called phytochromes. Their job is to take the measure of light every day. Tightly furled, covered in red-brown scales, each bud holds an embryonic copy of a maple branch, and each bud wants desperately to someday be a full-fledged branch. The leaves rustling in the wind and soaking up sun. But if the buds come out too soon, they'll be killed by freezing. Too late, and they'll miss the spring. So it's always fascinating, right? How plants are doing what they're doing. Completely independent of what humans have decided is like the thing to do. So, um, oh yeah, also, I was aware that the the sap flow that you would need for maple tapping only happened once a year, but I don't know if I'd forgotten or if I just didn't know what the requirements were for that, but apparently it's a combination of warm days and freezing nights so that the the sap freezes during the night and then kind of thaws during the day. But, in this context, warm is relative because it would be 35 to 42 degrees, presumably Fahrenheit. That's not disclosed, but she's writing within the US, so presumably it's Fahrenheit. Because otherwise, it'd be really hot. um, Alright. from what I understand, at least, um, there we go. From what I understand, at least, the sap flows from the roots up at the start of spring, because the buds and the new leaves and stuff, the growth points, the meristems, at the ends of the branches need energy in order to grow. So the sugars and the general nutrients are sent up. And that, at least from what it sounds like, that's around when the tapping starts, or happens, really. That's around when the tapping would happen. And the roots are sending everything up that has been collected in what's generally a pretty extensive root system over the winter that's, still there and stuff. To kickstart growth in the branches. And it's from what I understand, it's kind of like how bees make a lot of honey to feed the juvenile bees. It's a food source, that's why it's there. But sometimes there's an excess of honey. And if you're a beekeeper who actually does anything to properly care for your bees, then you only take that excess, and only during certain times of the year. Which I'm going to get into that particular more when go through this thing. But essentially, you don't harvest honey until the flowers have returned in the spring, or until after that, rather, because at that point the bees have already access to flowers, to pollen, to a food source, so they're not depending on the honey for food. But if you take honey out of the hive going into winter, then you're removing a food source that they would have been able to survive longer on. So if you're removing some of the food source as it were, at a point when more is coming, more can be acquired, it doesn't put as much strain on the plant, on the animal hive, what have you. As it would at other times. And yeah. And now that I've had the little spiel for the last 10 minutes, just to make sure that I'm not completely spouting inaccuracies here. It depends on the attracting pollinators. Okay, one sec. Alright. Okay. Yeah. And this is another thing. Just like, getting a shot or something shouldn't hurt. With the caveat, it shouldn't hurt any more than, like, usual, whatever that is for you personally, if done right. So, tapping shouldn't really damage the tree as long as it's done correctly. You can do it improperly and mess things up, but as long as you're doing it right, you should be fine. Okay. So we've got drilling a hole does make a wound, but if done right, your tree can handle tapping. When you drill a hole to tap your tree for maple syrup, it's generally 2 inches deep and less than 0.5 inches wide. To your mature 50-foot maple tree, that's just a tiny hole. Plus, the area you drill through is filled with millions of small vessels that allow sap to flow. Hurting a few simply isn't a big deal. By the time you remove the spout at the end of maple season, your tree will begin to repair itself. It will grow new wood to cover its tapping wound, and within a few years, the hole will be completely enclosed. And if you use basically, if you use decent tools, then it limits the potential issues. And also, I would say sanitize your tools if you're wanting to do something like that, because if it hasn't, especially if you've used those tools on another tree and you haven't cleaned them, I mean, A, that's just bad tool maintenance, but B, if there's something wrong with the first tree and you use something that's digging into the sap layer of another tree, you're potentially transferring disease between them. Just like, with people and animals and everything else. Washi tools. Disinfectant tools. It's a thing. The number of times with that. Okay. Oh, okay. So, at the end of the season, don't plug the tap holes with anything. Just let them do their thing. And whatever sap is in there will drain from where it needs to, and then it'll scab over, and there's going to be a little bit of a scar in that spot on the tree, but not too bad, and within a couple of years it would be like it was never there. So, don't know how accurate the never there bit is, but the rest of it seems legit. I am not familiar with pruning paint though. So, okay. Alright. Ow. Alright. Okay. As Honeycomb was saying, there's some scientific documentation that Venus flytraps can learn to ignore certain stimuli to a degree and can count to 3. Mostly because that's the number of times one of the internal hairs needs to be triggered before before the trap closes, to make sure that it's not just closing every time there's a slight breeze or something, because the closing and reopening process is so cost demanding. As to the flowers, it depends on the species, really. At the end of the day, it kind of comes down to niche, and a lot of situations where there's a particular plant that has evolved to work with a particular insect, or an insect that has evolved to work with a particular plant, or any number of situations. It's kind of... There's some that it's kind of a chicken and egg situation of which came first, but a lot of times, well, at least some of the time, it's kind of thought to be concurrent. Is that the word I'm looking for? At the same time? I want to say concurrent evolution, but is that what I'm looking at? Okay, convergent evolution is the independent evolution of similar features in species of different periods or epochs in time. That's not what it is. I mean, that's what that is. That's not what I was trying to find. Say that. Concurrent evolution, genetic traits that affect population structure. Knows that. What? No. Okay. Concurrent evolution, simultaneous evolution. Two strategies. Defense of population. Okay. Yeah. So there's times that there's a plant and a particular insect sees the plant and is like, oh, that's cool, I want to eat that. So goes flying over to the plant and brings back honey. No, nectar. There we go. Honey's made in the hive. Brings back nectar and pollen. And yeah. Alright. Okay. Alright. I was saying something, and now I can't remember what I was saying in any capacity. So, concurrent evolution. Yeah, okay. There we go. So, a lot of times, especially if flowers have very particular patterning, it's because, or foliage, really, too, from what I understand. When flowers have a very particular patterning, it was smart. Because doing it that way, pretty sure I'm right, but yeah, it tried to activate, uh, but we're good. We're good. Yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to roundaboutly say on the plants and insects and birds situation is, depending on the region and the species involved and stuff, either there was a species of pollinator that was in an area, and then the flowers that got the most pollination from whatever species decided that they were cool uh, did better than the ones that didn't, so they survived, so they exist. Or uh, there were particular flowers in an environment, and the birds, insects, whatever, that could best interact with those flowers had the best chance of survival. So there's that. Also, if you look at flowers under, I forget if it's UV or infrared, but there's usually like a kind of like almost landing pad situation on the flowers, so that you can kind of see the visual that a bee or another insect would see in that situation, which is kind of cool. So there's that. Alright. Oh, yeah. A bit of indigenous knowledge right here, right? From page 67. People of the Maple Nation made sugar long before they possessed trade kettles for boiling. Instead, they collected sap in birch bark pails and poured it into log troughs hollowed from basswood trees. The large surface area and shallow depth of the troughs was ideal for ice formation. Every morning, ice was removed, leaving a more concentrated sugar solution behind. The concentrated solution could then be boiled to sugar with far less energy required. The freezing nights did the work of many cords of firewood. Firewood. There we go. A reminder of elegant concoctions. Maple sap runs at the one time of year when this method is possible. So, that's cool. Alright. Yeah, exactly. The flowers, honestly, like, there's some that the pollen is only distributed if a certain species interacts with it, but that certain species is also, like, wow. Right. And again, not even brain fog or that I'm tired. It's just the thought disappeared. Okay. That's fun. Right. Stretch time because, like, seriously. Ah, man. Alright. Let's do this. So yeah, to recap from whatever that just was, plants don't really care who pollinates them, just that somebody pollinates them, and there's certain, okay, there's the thought. There's certain insects that at some point decided that certain plants had good nectar or what have you for them, and their wings, antenna, whatever, are the only thing that is of a certain shape to accurately contact a particular part of the plant. So therefore, the plant is only pollinated by the one species. However, if something else ends up pollinating the plant, they really don't care. It's not that big a thing. But it is cool to see how the pollination and such process operates. Alright. So, yeah. But yeah, okay. So, let's oh yeah. So, pretty much every person I've heard describe this, who has read it, who's been in the process of reading it, has basically said that the way that the author writes prose, it sounds like poetry. Which, prime example, quote from page 70, right? I'm living today in the shady future they imagined. So the people who built the house that she's living in currently. I'm living today in the shady future they imagined, drinking sap from the trees planted with their wedding vows. Because in older traditions, as a welcome to like the start of your new married life, twin trees would be planted on either side of the entryway to the house, And in this case, they happen to be maples, which are being tapped. So, tapping into the love and support and everything that has been guarding the house, has been sustaining the house for the last 200 years. So, something to keep in mind. Alright. Alright. Now, going to Witch Hazel. So Witch Hazel's the second essay in part 2. It's written from the perspective of the author's daughter. Now, I don't know which daughter, because whenever she's, I don't think she's ever mentioned by name, and it's always just my mom or my sister when she's talking about the other people in the family. But it's either Lyndon. What was it? Lyndon is the older one. I don't know what that sound was. Okay. Lyndon's the older one, and can't remember the younger one's name. Okay. Process. Anyway. So it's talking about one of their neighbors who is an older lady who also works with plants, has a long personal history working with plants and being kind of an herbal practitioner person for a lot of the community. And because speaking from the perspective of an anthropologist who has done anthropology fieldwork, right? The way that this person went about the interview process and everything is just not on. I don't know what kind of questions were asked or anything, but I don't know. I don't know about that one. But basically, Hazel, the elderly neighbor who the family was friends with for years, at one point, because they get to talking about Professor Kimmer's profession outside of working on the little plot of land. I don't think she ever described it as a farm per se, but farm adjacent, I suppose. And yes, you teach, you're a professor, you're a researcher. All right. And then Hazel says that there was some, what was it? quote, or, yeah, how to phrase. Hazel said, quote, how some other lady professor had once come with a tape recorder to talk to her and was going to put her in a book on account of all the old ways she knew. But the professor never came back, and Hazel had never seen the book, on page 75. And I've seen it changing a lot in the last, even just the last decade, right? Between trying to maintain objectivity between the researcher and whoever the subject or subjects are. It could be like one person, it could be an entire community. It depends on whatever the research is that's being conducted. And if you just go in saying, yes, you have interesting stories, I want to talk to you, ha. That only really works in context of having a reciprocal relationship if the researcher has made the effort to get to know the person who they're talking to for at least a little bit. And it depends on the person as to what that looks like. Because for some people, it's especially in my experience, at least, and this is by no means a universal or should be taken as anything more than my own personal experience with my research. But in my own experience, working with admittedly generally not always affluent, but somewhat privileged white people as the demographic for my research because it was contemporary British paganism, and that is the not pagan per se, but white people in Britain is kind of the I don't know, default setting for stuff. I'm saying it wrong, but there's that. But every once in a while, if you're working with and again, like going back to some of the other essays, right? Language is very important. How you think about whatever is happening. How you interact with linguistically whatever is happening. Whether it's a human, an animal, a tree, whatever. It changes how you perceive that individual and their relationship to you and their relationship to the rest of the world. And shapes how you not only view whoever it is, but how you structure your interaction with the person. And okay. Okay. Yeah. And in research, right, there's been more of a push to not rely solely on objective data, because subjective everything is very much a viable resource and is kind of the basis of ethnography. Because, like, how are you supposed to quantify in a numerical setting how, like, accurate or whatever the parameters are that you're working with? If you're working in an ethnographic setting with people from whatever the culture is, you know, it and even if it's just like the emic, I can never pronounce it right, but it, yeah, uh, emic and etic, yeah, perspectives. Um, but yeah, it's just as a thing, right? If you are a researcher, if you're going out in the field, especially, uh, which right now being face to face with folks probably not the best idea, you know, because reasons. Uh, but especially if you're directly interacting with people, particularly if not even if they're like the higher ranking or whatever in All right. Where did it where did it cut off? All right. Yeah. All right. What's the last thing that you heard so I know where to cut back in? Mm. All right. So we've got uh Emic is within the culture or group, really. The in group perspective. Edic is the out group perspective. So keep that in mind. So like if yeah. Alright. So like if you're talking about ethnography, right? Aha. Ha! Yes. Alright. Perfect. Perfect example. On a massive scale. Emic, Edic. Within the culture, outside of the culture. Yeah, exactly. So, uh, one of the things that was bugging me when I was reading through Hazel's chapter, right? The professor, from what is relayed, because that's the only context that we have, and it's filtered through probably a couple years uh, in Hazel's perspective, and then filtered again through the lens of um, a kid who's probably like 10, 10 or 11 maybe, having heard it. So, um, what we have in this situation is a professor showed up with a tape recorder to talk to Hazel because of all the old ways that she knew. But the professor never came back, and Hazel had never seen the book. So, someone who either was probably from a local university and heard that this old lady out somewhere knew things about plants and wanted to go have a chat. At which point, if she was local, there's a possibility that she would have just shown up on the doorstep, which, bad form. Uh, or uh, if there was an agreed upon meeting, because that's not said, but if it's like, hey, you sound kind of cool, can I talk to you? at least that establishes some kind of relationship prior to the actual interview, right? That's one of the things that, like, if you don't know the person prior to the interview, regardless of the setting, it's best if there's at least like 5, 10, if possible, minutes that you just kind of sit and have a chat to get to know the person and their responses to things, because there's some folks who uh, tend to respond to everything in a very sarcastic sort of manner, or seems sarcastic kind of manner, but that's just how they interact with everything. So if you have a baseline, then you know where to go from there. And having a mutual like discussion about something, anything, establishes a line of communication, a line of trust, so that you're more likely to actually be able to have a decent conversation about whatever it is that is being discussed. Also, if you say that you're writing a book, and because you're writing a book, you want to interview someone specifically to put it in the book prior to the thing being published, at the very least, you show the person the manuscript. Even if it's just like an email or whatever, which wouldn't have been an option in like the mid 80s, really, at, at this time. But like a letter or whatever, at the very least, to like, if the interview is integral to a certain chapter or whatever, then at the very least, like, print out that section and go, hey, look, so you know, this is what it turned out like. Just so that the person knows how they're being represented, especially if you're interviewing someone who is from a notoriously underserved or underrepresented or otherwise marginalized community, which Hazel, from all the descriptions, was very much in poverty. And poor people, especially poor people dealing with some kind of disability, like both of her kids were, are notoriously part of the underrepresented, marginalized community in that capacity. Yeah, exactly. Just basic human decency, you know? Like, I, as a human, acknowledge your humanity. By the way, this is the thing that we worked on together. Because, and that's the language, too. If it's my sources, or I used resources, or whatever, if you have the use language, then it's a taking relationship. If it's working with someone to create something else, working with someone to create a narrative, working with someone, a plant, a animal, whatever. It's a co-creative relationship. So, there's that. Basically, TLDR on that one. If you're doing any kind of research or anything that involves interpersonal communication, do the communication and treat everyone involved with basic human decency. So, there's that. That one, yeah. And also, like, Hazel was just a gem. Seriously. Like, there's a whole section in here where she just wanted to be able to have Christmas in her house one more time. So they got everyone together and did Christmas in her house. And she was happy because she was able to have Christmas in her house. And it was just like, all the feels. All of the feels. Like, seriously. I don't know if it was the book or if it was just me or what, but this section, like, I got at least misty-eyed a whole bunch of times, you know? Seriously. Seriously. Don't be a jerk to people, and you're good. You know? Just, that shouldn't have to be a baseline that someone's told, but, like, that seems to be a baseline that folks need to be told. That, I don't know. Seriously. Such a sweetie. And just, when she's talking about the plants, too, right? Like, just going up to the witch hazel that's the last thing to bloom before winter, right? And there's a quote from 78 that's I made me many a batch of this old witch hazel, and folks would come to me for it special. I'd cook up that bark in the fall and have it all winter to rub on aches and pains, burns and rashes. Everybody wanted it. There ain't hardly no hurt the woods don't have medicine for. And then goes in later, and then when there's no medicine, no plant medicine, no chemical medicine that can cure the hurt, when the wood, uh, that I read that note wrong. Wow. Okay, one sec. And when there's no medicine to cure the hurt, then when the woods can't manage to heal something, then we have community. We have each other and friends and stuff as a support network. And there's another quote in there. My mother and Hazel Barnett, unlikely sisters, I suppose, learned well from the plants they both loved. They made a balm for loneliness together, a strengthening tea for the pain of longing. And it's just. Ah. Right. Right in the feels. Ah. Oh, man. Like, It's funny though, right? Whenever I think of like the genre of things that I tend to read, it's all it always ends up being like uh sci-fi fantasy, right? Or like fantasy romance or something. Completely forgetting that at least half of what I read is stuff like this. Like, or just like environmental tomes in general. Like, what? uh, seriously. Mm, yeah. Uh, yeah, no, after I finish, or maybe even before I finish the book form, I think I'm gonna go back and listen to it on audio, if for no other reason than to actually hear the words said correctly. Yeah, right? Right? Exactly. Uh, uh, okay. Interesting, interesting commentary happening in the comment section. Hello, friends. How are you doing? I mean, they're just. It's just a headset. These. Uh. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I am not, however, wearing any lipstick. Yeah, I would say that is accurate. Uh, Not currently writing books, but I do draw. Um, this one I actually have a video of the process on this guy. On if it actually lets me type. Okay, that's not how you spell anything. Okay, yeah, if you go to the first link on there, I need to update. Yeah, we need to update those. But if you go to the first link, the most recent upload is actually the process of doing this guy. But it's basically there was a kit where the outlines were printed, and then I did the art part of it with Sharpies. So there's that. Um, yeah. All right. So we've got we're on. Is there anything else that I wanted to talk about in this one? I don't think so. Alright, alright. So, for the third essay, it's a mother's work. And that's when we start really hearing about the pond and trying to clear the pond so that it can be a viable swimming location, really. Because currently, at the time that the essay is taking place, I suppose you'd say, it's inhabited by a family of ducks. Well, a few ducks. Yeah, it's inhabited by a few ducks, and then some geese and um, tadpoles and a whole lot of wildlife. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate the goopability of the nose. Also, I guess it didn't go off with the alerts, which, right, yeah, okay. I totally forgot temporarily that I'm in the screen that I use to record, not generally to stream, so I don't have the notifications activated for this particular screen right now, which is why I didn't see or hear any kind of notification when you followed. So, trans rights 108, thank you for following, much appreciated. uh, yeah, okay, so, wow. Alright, moving on. So, anyway, the the pond is going through a period of eutrophication, meaning the process of nutrient enrichment that comes with age. So, like, things grow, and then they die and decompose on the bottom of the pond, and then things grow in that layer and then die, and then it just kind of keeps building up, you know? And yeah, quote, "This is the way for many ponds. The bottom gradually fills until the pond becomes a marsh." That's there we go. In the notes it was the pond becomes a marsha, and that's that. No, no, the pond does not become a member of the Brady Bunch. Thank you. Okay, the pond becomes a marsh, and maybe someday a meadow, and then a forest. Ponds grow old, and though I will too, I like the ecological idea of aging as progressive enrichment rather than progressive loss. Uh, and the process is sometimes accelerated by human involvement, like nutrient rich runoff from fertilized fields or septic tanks, that ends up in the water, where it supports exponential growth of algae. So that's also why part of the issue with the ducks and the geese and everything living in the pond would have exacerbated the situation, because the presence of increased amounts of excrement would lead to a more fertile growing setup, shall we say. Uh, yeah, seriously, but uh, I as annoying as this freaking book is, I kind of love that "Don't Be a Monica" has become a thing. But yeah, seriously, like, oh, was it just just this gem of like sophisticated scientific analysis sort of tone, you see. If you reach out far, and apologies if the mic is picking up my stomach growling, apparently. Haven't had enough food today, I guess. I don't know. Because, not hungry, but, like, apparently, some part of me is. Anyway, what was it? Quote, if you reach far out of a light canoe and try to lift a heavy mat of algae at the end of a rake, physics dictates that swimming will occur. Ah, classic. Um, and it is really cool though when you look at it is really cool how when you look at a regular container of pond water, pond scum, whatever it is that you want to call it, how many different species are represented in there. Like, seriously, very cool. With the zooplankton and everything else. Um, gotcha. Seriously, like, the quotable gems in this thing. Wow. Like, so many. So many. Uh, Also, um, with the metaphors on here, right? Like, needing to, if you're trying to make a concerted change in something, if you're trying to move forward through a situation that might be like weighing you down, or like trying to draw you into some kind of mire, right? A lot of times, the only way to get through it is to get through it. It helps a lot if you have, some kind of support system there, backing you up. But in this particular, she's just kind of winging it by herself, at least metaphorically, you know. Um, but there's um there's another line. I came to know the feel of the gravelly bottom below the mug, the sucking mud by the cattails, and the cold stillness where the bottom dropped away from the shallows. Transformation is not accomplished by tentative waiting at the edge, so, like, you need to sometimes go in the. But, like, also, with that, the context. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, exactly. Like, if if you're going into it as if you're going into it as part of the ecosystem instead of outside of the ecosystem and trying to, like, enact change on it, if you're in there and you're wanting to learn about those who are also inhabiting that same space, it's very much a who are you? What are you doing here? What is your purpose? You know, a conversation. Even if it's nonverbal, even if it's just like you talking to a slide, because, like, isn't that just a thing that people do? You know, like, oh, hello there. Like, I don't know if that's just a thing that I always grew up doing, but that's how I've always interacted with animals, definitely. Um, the last, like, I don't know, decade or so, probably a little less than that, but right around a decade or so, it's extended to plants too. And it's like, you know, you know. But yeah, no, seriously, wading into that thing. I mean, admittedly, it's one thing if it's your area and you're a scientist and has taken samples and knows what's in there. Like, if if I was able to identify what was living in the pond, maybe not even like all of it, but like at least some of it, I'd be more likely to have a jaunt in the pond, you know? But, like, also, mm, yeah, exactly. People who don't talk to nature are, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. I mean, honestly, like, there, there's been times that I've even been out with, like, friends and stuff, and most of them have just accepted that I'm, like, the weird plant person, which, fine, I'll own it. we'll be out somewhere and like, oh, there's a tree. Hello, tree. Hello, friend. And, you know, I don't get a response, but like, can you not? There we go. But it's just like, I am human person acknowledging that tree person is a thing. It's, and by that I mean like exists. Yeah. In the same phrase as like, that is a thing that exists, like as as a phrase. Yeah. Ah. Anyway, um, I will say though, like there's one part in here that's like you can just feel the excitement in there. It's, I taught at school. I taught ecology, but on a Saturday afternoon when the kids were off at our friends, I could do ecology. Like, yes, you have fun playing in the algae laden pond. Uh, uh, but yeah. Oh yeah, no, I don't doubt it. All right. I mean, seriously, there are certain plants that I've come across that say, mm, they have a personality. You know. I mean, they all have personality, but like there's some that have a personality that is palpable. And that's not even just a species. That's like there are certain individual plants that are characters. uh, so also, right? It having the, and I'm pretty sure this is just it was part of it because it was a parallel, but um the professor's sister is talking to her and says, uh, among our, I've seen and heard the pronunciation. I don't know how many times, and I still can't remember it. Potawatomi. Potawatomi. Uh, among our Potawatomi people, women are the keepers of water. They carry the sacred water to ceremonies and act on its behalf. So, very cool. And if she's working with the water to try and clean the water so that it's inhabitable by human kids, but is also dealing with having the water also need to be inhabitable by everybody else who lives in the ecosystem. There be conflict, but also Potawatomi. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I definitely need to at least listen to the audiobook. At least the once. Because really. Ah. Okay. Yeah, so there's that. Uh, and then there's the she's acknowledging that there's a reciprocal relationship between the pawn and herself, saying, it's been a balanced exchange. I worked on the pawn, and the pawn worked on me, and together we made a good home. So, like, both benefited, and from the mutually beneficial relationship, things are more positive at the other end of it. Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, no, it I I I started reading the Henna Wars this morning, and it I know some of the pronunciations, but I think I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the audio. Otherwise, I know I'm gonna just keep pronouncing everything wrong when I do the reviews and stuff. So, it's like, I'm trying, but also, it's like, it's one of those. I acknowledge my limitations on that one. So, ah, oh man. Okay, so moving on to the Constellation of Water Lilies. That's where the uh the kids go off to university, and she decides to go for a canoe trip for a bit. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those that like I listened to an excerpt from what is it? I want to say it's exactly. I want to say it's Hurricane Girl. Like what? Come on. It's like uh Hurricane Child. Um I was listening to it and the narrator is um the narrator very much fits with the text, but there's some terms that it's like if the audio and the visual coincided, then it would work a lot better. Something tells me this is one of those two. Yeah. So, yeah, no, yeah. Which I'm the in words words. I'm really glad to be reading um the Henna Wars one. Uh, because most of the time when I've read something with that kind of theme and stuff, where it's taking place in a setting that's non white, Anglo Saxon, European, whatever, uh, there's for a long while there's been this push for uh either publishers to have authors insert like definitions or whatever or something else, but it always kind of takes you out of the direct storyline, even if it's like inserted to make it more understandable. But reading something that's own voices, that's written for an audience who knows what the terms are, even just for the first couple of pages, feels a lot more like, I don't know, rewarding than having it be like, this term, in parentheses, definition, and then back to the story. Even if, you have to look up a few words and stuff here and there, because it's more authentic, you know? and it's very cool. Anyway, off the little soapbox on that one. But yeah. Uh, oh yeah, I did appreciate the line on page 100 though. As I opened the car door, uh, her daughter Larkin uh started to walk away and called out loudly, "Mom, if you break down in uncontrollable sobs on the highway, please pull over." The entire parking lot erupted in laughter, and then we were all released. Like, because sometimes you just need a bit of humor to diffuse whatever kind of situation's happening. Like, seriously. Uh, but yeah, it's interesting because between the pond that's got essentially stagnant water, I mean it flows down to the bigger lake, but it's more or less stagnant enough that there's algae growing in it in giant sheets and a whole colony of tadpoles and other critters that just decide to live in there. So, yeah. Um, and there's an interesting dichotomy between change and stagnation where, like, you want change because change is evolution and development and experience and progression, but also is sometimes terrifying and, by definition, an unknown quantity. But if things remain as is in perpetuity, there we go, they stagnate and fester and eventually decay, and without the influx of new energy and progress and development, not like commercial development, but like development of whatever the progression is, that's when there's like disease and whatever else happens in that. And even if there is decay, then there can still be progression from the decay. That's when it's like there's compost and mulch and stuff. That's the decay, and then something grows from it. Yeah. Admittedly, I'm not all that familiar with that particular situation. I just know that Tahoe is oddly very blue from what I've seen in pictures, even though it's a lake, which has always been a weird sort of situation. Because any mountainy type lake that I've ever been to has had some serious algae situation in the middle of it. Of course, the one time that I'm vividly remembering, I think there was a bloom or something happening. Uh, because the entire lake, and it was, I mean, granted, I was like 4, but it was, it was a big lake. No idea where it was, but it was a big lake, and we were camping. And our dog decided to go for a swim in the algae lake. And then we had to hose her off by the lake. And the tent smelled like wet dog for 3 days. So that was fun. The general human perspective seems to be either it was this way when we got here, so it should stay that way forever, or I want to improve it because money. Yeah, exactly. There's like, there's no in between. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it wasn't even that she was chasing a steak or something, it was just like, oh, water! Yes. Mine now. Like, patch why. I appreciate the exploring, but like, also why? No. Uh, that was, she was an interesting canine. There's stories about that dog, honestly. But anyway. But yeah, no, it seems to be either progress is building up an area because, you know, it wasn't being used and there's money. Or, bringing people to a particular spot because money. Or bringing people to a particular spot because, you know, it's cool. Alright, you wanna hear? Okay. Alright, alright. Okay. So the particular one that I was thinking right then, um, the trouble story point redeemed. All right. So patches, right? Uh, all right. So this dog not only went into the algae lake just for lulz, you know. Uh, but when I was like 5, I want to say, yeah, when I was 5, we were repainting the kitchen, and I don't remember if we painted the rest of the house at the same time or not. I'm pretty sure this has been pink since I was 10, so been a while. Or 9 or something. But when I was 5, we were painting the kitchen and got new like cabinets and stuff. The kitchen was being remodeled essentially. So when one is remodeling a space, there's old cabinets, there's old tiles and plaster that's sometimes on the walls or the floor. This dog, right? I mean, I love her to bits. I really do. But for some reason, never quite figured out why. But for some reason, she decided to eat the plaster that was all over the place. Just like licking it up off the floor, off the walls and stuff. You know, because reasons, I guess. I don't know. Um, I, I think that was the same era that we had another dog that decided to chew through the phone lines and eat a flower pot. Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember going on too many trips with Patch, but yeah. No idea. Um, oh, for the trips? No, that was admittedly, I think, yeah, I think when I was 5, and when I was like 8, maybe. Yeah, because by the time I was 8, we didn't have Patch anymore. We had Ty and Mo, the cats. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Oh. Because that would have the peppers and the tomato and depending on how they deal with the potato in there too. Jeez. Um. Honestly, I don't know on that one. I know. I know my folks were worried about her for a while, and there didn't seem to be any lasting issue, but I was more in the like, doggy doesn't feel good. Pet the doggy to make the doggy feel good. So I don't remember honestly on that one. But yeah. I don't know. Ow. Ow. but I would assume that it probably did, at least for a while. It would also depend on the kind of plaster, because yeah, because I don't think anything had been updated in the kitchen since if I was 5, it would have been 92, and we had that, like, green scale teapot sort of wallpaper in there that, from what I've heard, was kind of a thing in, like, around 75. So yeah, nothing had been changed since sometime in the 70s, I want to say. And it was plaster from behind the tiles from the 70s. So, not entirely sure past that. Oh. Yeah, no, that's what happened. Well, he wasn't sick, but one of my cats got spooked and bit the person trying to calm him down, so yeah. And I'm your friends and all that. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's at least if the person is at fault, then it's like, I mean, you saw. There's just sometimes, right, that it's like you saw this, you saw all of this, and then decided that sticking your hand anywhere near this was a good idea. Really, that was a choice. Because really, come on. That is what it is. Oh yeah, on the book thing, right? Yeah, you are entirely welcome. Admittedly, like I have another travel-y dog story. That's yeah, mostly because um there's only a handful of times that we actually went anywhere because surgery and fun things like that. But I digress. Have a lot more random cat stories though, just because of proximity. So, if that's a thing. Uh, but yeah, so just something of note, right? For the uh for the water lilies, there's a bunch of different species, which to kind of gets into a little bit. Uh, but lotus are a type of water lily. And thank you for the clip. Much appreciate. But the way that they grow is the leaves kind of unfurl up, and then once the flowers pollinated, they kind of go back down and then come back up with the fruit generally. So it's a process of emerging from the murky, decomposing muck at the bottom of the pond, bottom of the body of water, going through the water that's like, if you look at metaphor and symbolism and stuff, water's usually intention and deep thought and knowledge and things. So something rising from the deepest muck at the bottom of a lake through wisdom and knowledge and stuff, and after going through that, emerges on the surface, and then periodically, like, that cycle happens again. And it's a fascinating kind of thing. It really is. Yeah. Yeah, I should probably move that. Exactly. They get all the things. Oh yeah. Hadn't quite realized the process for the nice. Very nice. I'd say yeah, I'd say that's a decent representation, I think. Okay. So with the process previously demonstrated, what was it? Okay. Scientists used to think that the movement of oxygen from the surface leaves of lilies to the rhizome, because it's got a rhizome at the bottom, it was merely the slow process of diffusion, an inefficient drift of molecules from a region of high concentration in the air to low concentration underwater. But new inquiries revealed a flow we could have known by intuition if we had remembered the teachings of plants. The new leaves take up oxygen into the tightly packed air spaces of their young developing tissues, whose density creates a pressure gradient. The older leaves, with looser air pockets created by the tatters and tears that open the leaf, create a low pressure region where oxygen can be released into the atmosphere. This gradient exerts a pull on the air taken in by the young leaf. Since they are connected by air-filled capillary networks, the oxygen moves by mass flow from the young leaves to the old, passing through and oxygenating the rhizome in the process. The young and the old are linked in one long breath, an inhalation that calls for reciprocal exhalation, nourishing the common root from which they both arose. New leaf to old, old to new, mother to daughter, mutuality endures. I am consoled by the lesson of Lilies. So, yeah. Very cool. Ow. Okay. Oh yeah, and then the last little bit on this one. We are showered every day with gifts, but they are not meant for us to keep. Your life is in their movement, the inhale and the exhale of our shared breath. Our work and our joy is to pass along the gift and to trust that what we put into the universe will always come back. So, yeah, a bit of the philosophy and everything on that one as well. So we've just got the one essay left on here. Allegiance to Gratitude, which is very cool. Okay, but before we do that, if you haven't stretched for a while, give your back a stretch, because you'll probably need it. Alright. So, also tea. Because. Yeah. Like, the whole allegiance to the flag thing has always been a bit with the but especially in a situation where it's indigenous kids doing that, it's like, oh yay, yeah, okay, awesome, definitely on the radar for that one. All right, it's where was it? I had no earthly idea what a republic even was, and was none too sure about God either. And you didn't have to be an 8-year-old Indian to know that liberty and justice for all was a questionable premise. Like, really? Yeah, no. Seriously. I never got the, like, feeling part of something by doing the pledge. However, I do understand how people would feel that way. Yeah. Mostly because that's part of why it's a thing. It's like kind of an indoctrination tactic and all that for the pledge situation, at least. Um, but yeah, down here we've got many native peoples across the world, despite myriad cultural differences, have this in common. We are rooted in cultures of gratitude, which totally makes sense because a lot of what I'm reading in here I've seen in other. Admittedly, I haven't seen all that many actually well done ethnographies that I've been able to access, per se, because, JSTOR's a thing. But, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know we always ended up needing to fold it for scouts, but I can't remember how to go about doing it in the triangle thing. Like, yeah, yeah, it was the triangle, but I can't remember if it was like the U.S. flag or like the troop flag. Yeah, that's the thing, cause um, mostly because until I don't know, until like 10 years ago, uh, 10, 15 years ago maybe, um, there was still a big emphasis. I mean, as recently as yeah, yeah, as recently as when I was at least in high school, if not in university. Um, it was still frowned upon for someone to write the ethnography and research for their own community because you're expected, um, eh, as an anthropologist, you were expected to be part of the sciences. And in order to be part of the sciences, you have to maintain objectivity, meaning that you have to view the culture from an outside perspective. So there was this whole debate thing of whether or not writing from within the culture about the culture was valid. Which, looking at it now, it's like, obviously it was. All you gotta do is put your bias in there that says, like, right, this right here might not appear the same as it would to someone outside of it. Because this is my culture, this is where I'm coming from, this is the history of why it's relevant. You don't even have to put that in the main text, just like a little footnote or something. Like, it's fine. But because of that, you had a whole bunch of mostly white people writing about everybody else for centuries and thinking that that was like the epitome of high academia, which it was the epitome of high academia because that's all that academia was for a while. Which, fun times. And there's some that I've heard tell about. It's mostly been just single articles, I think. But where there was a team of one person from outside the community and one person from inside the community, and both wrote their own accounts, so you got to see both perspectives of what it means to the people taking part in whatever tradition it was, and how it appears to the outside perspective. Yeah, exactly. We look at cultures through our own bias because that's our own experience and everything gets filtered through that. And yeah, and then expect your own bias to be the only thing that's not biased. Even though, by the very definition, it is. Really. Like, how? Just when you're talking with your hands and you end up just stabbing yourself in the teeth with your nails. It's a fun time. Yeah. Apparently I've been handling books and stuff too much. My hands don't taste great right now. So yeah, it's uh seriously. Also, hi Shane. How are you doing? How is your fabulous self today? Yeah, there is understandable. Fully understandable. Indeed. Um yeah, we're almost done with I don't know if there was a spike in the audio or anything, but my headphones are all my headphones have either been really weird the last couple days, or like half the audio that I've tried to listen to on my computer has been peaky and weird. So it's probably these, admittedly. Um, doing all right. Oh, so like I ended up finding some super duper awesome bookmarks on Etsy, and they're super cool and fabulous. So I now have an ace bookmark that's purple on the back, and it's got a Monstera friend, and it's cool. And there's a couple of different ones, and they each have their own plant friend, and um I'm having a happy with that, I'm gonna say. But yeah, we're almost through part two. Um right now we're working on Allegiance to Gratitude. as opposed to allegiance to the flag, which am a fan, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Also, oh yeah. Yes, that was very very well put, Shane. There we go. Okay, so so we're also currently working on some readathons and stuff. There's one for um the May one is for Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. All right. My wife got a peace lily for anniversary gift to herself. Aw, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, no, it. Pedro sounds like a fabulous plant friend. Fabulous indeed. Yes. Okay. One sec. We've got. So they're talking about being in oh, in school. Here the school week begins and ends not with the Pledge of Allegiance, but with the Thanksgiving address. A river of words as old as the people themselves, known more accurately in the Onondaga language as the words that come before all else. This ancient order of protocol sets gratitude as the highest priority. The gratitude is directed straight to the ones who share their gifts with the world. Which, yes, indeed. Then a bit later, in this ritual, their teachers remind them that every day, beginning with our feet first, beginning with where our feet first touch the earth, we send greetings and thanks to all members of the natural world. And then they go through Onondaga. Okay. Yeah, no, definitely I need to listen to this because yeah. Like uh I attempted to pronounce everything correctly in the video that is going up for patrons like right after stream's over. Because I forgot to make it live before. But yeah, gonna have to listen to some of the audiobooks in there just to be able to know how to pronounce things properly. Especially because, at least for some of them, it's the author who's the voice behind it. So, yeah. Case in point, right here. Yeah. I do quite appreciate though. Because what is it? The names and the power that are behind. Oh, why is my nose itchy right now? Come on, man. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, but yeah, the pledge has no place here. Onondaga is a sovereign territory surrounded on every side by the republic for which it stands. Like all is one word. Which with the amount that is said, that's basically the name. Because that's what's used more than the United States of America. Or pretty much anything else. Because it's become ritualized to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And what you routinely call something is what the name tends to become, you know? But outside the jurisdiction of the United States, starting the day with the Thanksgiving address is a statement of identity and an exercise of sovereignty, both political and cultural, and so much more. And that's just, good stuff. Very, very good stuff. If any of y'all have not read this, would highly recommend. Highly recommend. And if you get to part 3 by next week, or even if you don't get to part 3 by next week, you can still pop over for Botany Book Club next Monday. But if you get to part 3 by next week, then we can have a chat about it in the chat. Yeah. Master of eloquence, I am. Huh. And just like there's so many gems in here, right? You can't listen to the Thanksgiving address without feeling wealthy. And while expressing gratitude seems innocent enough, it's a revolutionary idea. In a consumer society, contentment is a radical proposition. Recognizing abundance rather than scarcity undermines an economy that thrives by creating unmet desires. Gratitude cultivates an ethic of fullness, but the economy needs emptiness. The Thanksgiving address reminds you that you already have everything you need. Gratitude doesn't send you out shopping to find satisfaction. It comes as a gift rather than a commodity, subverting the foundation of the whole economy. That's good medicine for land and people alike. Yeah. And then over here, page 112. For me, the cumulative impact of the Pledge of Allegiance from my time as a schoolgirl to my adulthood was the cultivation of cynicism and a sense of the nation's hypocrisy, not the pride it was meant to instill. Like, seriously. Seriously. Yeah, the compulsion to accrue capital. And as yeah, it would have been last week. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but there was a parallel between cultural appropriation, I think it was, and the kind of inbuilt necessity to possess and master all the things and be in possession of nature rather than being part of nature that comes out of the Abrahamic traditions, because that's what in the texts Eve essentially had to do after being flung out of Eden. But yes, it very much dovetails with Marx because capitalism. Okay. And then the words are simple, but in the art of their joining, they become a statement of sovereignty, a political structure, a bill of responsibilities, an educational model, a family tree, and a scientific inventory of ecosystem services. It is a powerful political document, a social contract, a way of being, all in one piece. But first and foremost, it is the credo for the culture of gratitude. Cultures of gratitude must also be cultures of reciprocity. Each person, human or no, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them. If an animal gives its life to feed me, I am in turn bound to support its life. If I receive a stream's gift of pure water, then I am responsible for returning a gift in kind. An integral part of a human's education is to know those duties and how to perform them. The Thanksgiving address reminds us that duties and gifts are two sides of the same coin. Yeah. Like, seriously. So, that being said, once again, I reiterate, do not get this. This is amazing. So, anyone have any observations, analyses that we haven't touched on, discussion things, alternative points of view, what have you? Oh, jeez. Ow. Oh, man. And anyone coming in, we're reading Braiding Sweetgrass, This week we were going through part 2, that's Tending Sweetgrass, as noted up in the thing there. So next Monday at 4 p.m. PST or GMT -8, we're going through part 3, that is Picking Sweetgrass. So, and there we go. Yeah. There's what was it? There was oh, ah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Actually, let me go back up here. One sec. The problem with like taking a lot of notes is that you have to then scroll through a lot of notes. So, one moment, por favor. Oh yeah, yeah. That the environmental issues themselves, yeah, totally. But hadn't thought of it with the denial for climate change, but that is a very good point. Um, yeah, because going back to last week's, one of the first passages from like 7, yeah, from page 7, because it starts with the story of Sky Woman who uh falls to Earth and then creates uh the Earth on the back of a turtle in um is it Ojibwe? Uh, from the traditions and stuff. Uh, and then there's a note that Sky Woman had an integrated, nurturing relationship with her gardens and the animals living in them that she uh, helped to grow and raise and everything. And she tended to them, and those growing up with her stories know of that integrated relationship. And then there's a quote: on the other side of the world was another woman with a garden and a tree, but she was banished from the garden and the gates clanged shut behind her. That mother of men was made to wander in the wilderness and earn her bread by the sweat of her brow, not by filling her mouth with the sweet, juicy fruits that bend the branches low. In order to eat, she was instructed to subdue the wilderness into which she was cast. And then a bit later, and then they met, the offspring of Sky Woman and the children of Eve, and the land bears the scars of that meeting, the echoes of our stories. Our relationship with the land cannot heal with until we hear its stories. It's like, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, it's very much if, and that's also part of the language too. If nature is an it, if the tree is an it, then oh yeah, yeah. There, there's a bit that I forgot from. Where's it? Come on, him. Animus. Uh, hmm, let's see. Okay. Yeah. If Maple is an it, we can take up the chainsaw. If Maple is a her, we think twice. The plants and places love to hear the old language, but as long as you speak it in your heart, then they hear you. You don't have to speak it verbally, even though they like that too. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, wasn't sure where exactly, just because of everything that's happened with displacement and all that over the decades and centuries, really, of destruction of indigenous communities. Um, but yeah, no, it is. I know they were based in the Northeast and Great Lakes region, so that would make sense. Um, because it's Sky Woman in Turtle Island. So, uh, so there is that. Yeah. But yeah, if you have the opportunity, I would highly recommend reading this, even if it's just on loan from the library. Because I know I'm reading a couple of books on Libby and Cloud Library right now for the Asian Readathon, and there's a few queued up for next month for the LGBTQ plus. Not entirely sure what the final name is going to be for that one. Readathon. But yeah, so uh, but I have not listened to the audio yet. But from what Honeycomb has said, it's super awesome, and it's narrated by the author, which is great. And I need to listen to it because pronunciation, if nothing else. That and hearing someone read their own stories breathes another level breathes another level of life into it, because not only is it the story being told, but it's the person's story being told, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. It's you have created a thing and are now giving it voice. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool indeed. So there's that. We've been on for just under 4 hours. So yeah, I'm probably going to at least try and edit down a few bits of this to make it a little bit more coherent. But we'll see. Anyway, I will be back on Twitch on Thursday, 4 p.m. PST or GMT -8 for Botany discussion time /art /game /whatever it is that we decide to do. And then next Monday is going to be a part 3 of Braiding Sweetgrass. Looking forward to that a lot. And yeah. So, oh yeah, I've been posting more on, let me type, dang it. I've been posting more on YouTube the last couple of weeks. If y'all want to pop over there and check it out, that'd be cool. And then we're gonna where is it? Hey, I'm good with that. I am, like, when you say plant plagues, right? Are we talking plagues of plants or plagues that affect plants? Because they're two different things. Also, if anyone is not already in the Discord, and you want to pop in there, we have some interesting chats about plants and art and random other fun things, and do like brainstorm sessions for stuff like that. Yeah, basically. Plant fungus versus kudzu. That's a good way to phrase it. Interestingly, apparently kudzu is pretty tasty. I don't think I've had anything with it in there, but yeah. Well then. Most of the time I think they tend to be I think plant plagues of that nature tend to be fungal generally. We shall see. Yeah, no, it's I forget how you need to prepare it, but I believe that I think that's Japan. Um, I'm pretty sure it's Japan that uses it in some capacity. Whether it's as greens or something else. But yeah, it it's one of those that it was everywhere, so it got cut back and like, yeah, well, we can eat it, it's fine. So, uh, uh, okay, so all kinds of fun times. All right, but yeah, we'll put a pin in that for right now and figure something with plant type plague sort of things and whatnot for Thursday. Uh, for right now, we're gonna go over and raid Poe, who is a pretty cool bean and just generally awesome. So anyway, have a great, super fantastic rest of your day.